So, how would you describe yourself? What is the job or trade you've been doing for the last 10 years? Or more?
Garbage disposal. Garbage disposal. A sanitary engineer. I'm a very, very good shot. Would you like me to show you how good a shot I am?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll get my young assistant, Trent. Grab that bottle. Get over there. Here we go. Show you?
Okay.
Will I show you? All right. Hold it up clear. Hang on, just see if the gun works first. Oh, the gun works nicely. Yep, I'm a crack shot.
Between the ages of 20 and 38, Mark Brandon Reid, one of Australia's most notorious underworld figures, spent only 13 months outside of prison. Convicted of crimes such as armed robbery, firearm offences, assault, arson, kidnapping, torture, and impersonating a police officer, it's almost absurd to think that a criminal as violent as this could be celebrated. But as with other figures of Melbourne's criminal underworld, it developed and produced a lot of larger-than-life characters that captured the public's imagination, and Mark Reid was no exception. From underworld violent criminal to children's book author, this is the life of Mark Chopper Reid. Welcome back to another episode of Melbourne's Criminal Underworld here on Shadow Matter. Today's episode is of Mark Brandon Reid, better known as Chopper, one of Melbourne's underworld's most notorious and violent criminals, not to be confused with comedian Heath Franklin's portrayal of Chopper on stage and screen. Ancient Greek philosopher Socrates once lamented, "Fame is the perfume of heroic deeds." And while Chopper Reid's deeds can certainly not be described as heroic, in the modern age of celebrities, we often admire and look up to those who seem unattainable or otherworldly. And with that, the crossover of criminal to celebrity, no matter how bizarre or strange, can be found. Ordinary humans who have extraordinary talents such as singing or acting, or the perception of superhuman abilities in the sports arena often captivate our attention and admiration, and with that perception comes a sense of ourselves being quite ordinary or pedestrian by comparison. In short, celebrities are often regarded as otherworldly to us, godlike, alien, living outside the fringes of normal society. And it would seem that criminals, no matter how dangerous, can sometimes fall into this perception. Criminals already operate outside our everyday perception of law-abiding society. Think of a powerfully rich mob boss like John Gotti, or a serial killer like Ted Bundy, or even to a lesser extent, mythical thief Robin Hood. We think to ourselves, if I did this, I'd be caught, convicted, and sent to prison, without so much as a footnote in the annals of Wikipedia history articles. Or perhaps our morals have us firmly fixed in the grounds of right and wrong, that when we hear or see these larger-than-life criminals, we can't possibly fathom how or why they would commit these acts. They seem foreign to us, alien, and yet strangely interesting. As is the case with our subject on today's episode, in his lifetime, Mark Chopper Reid had books written about him, movies, music albums, countless interviews, and even been impersonated on stage for comedy gigs. He appeared as himself on stage talking about his life and the crimes he committed, appeared on TV shows, rubbed shoulders with international celebrities, made public service announcements for drink driving and, strangely, domestic abuse. So how did this self-proclaimed human garbage disposal unit go from cutting off people's toes to sharing the limelight with esteemed actors? Mark Brandon Reid was born in Melbourne, Victoria, on 17th of November 1954 to a World War I veteran father, Heath Reid, and a devout Seventh-day Adventist mother. He was raised in the suburbs of Collingwood and Fitzroy. Until the age of 5, he was placed in a children's home. He was often bullied at school, saying that by the age of 15, he had been on the losing end of several hundred fights. At his mother's request, he was often beaten by his father severely. Most of Reid's life is a little murky, as he was known to embellish or even lie about details, with some instances showing contradictory statements when asked the same questions in different interviews. Even his autobiography cannot be taken as gospel, as it contradicts himself in later interviews. What we do know is that he has always maintained that he was molested as a young child, and by the age of 14, he was made a ward of the state and was placed in several mental institutions as a teenager, where he states he underwent electroshock therapy. When he was still young, Chopper Read was already an accomplished street fighter and the leader of the Surrey Road Gang, a hardened street gang with a notorious reputation for violence. He began his criminal career by robbing drug dealers based in massage parlours in the inner suburbs of Paran of Melbourne. It was in the late 70s and 80s that Read became one of the most dangerous men in Australia. The Melbourne criminal underworld feared him, as he became the local version of an underworld terrorist. For many years, he saw himself as a street soldier who didn't care if he lived or died. He often implemented very colourful ways of torturing members of Melbourne's underworld, using bolt cutters to remove the toes of his victims. But more famously, his favourite form of torture was using a blowtorch on his victims' feet. He would do this as an incentive for them to produce enough money so that Chopper would leave them alive. He would say of this in later interviews that he believed he was doing society a favour by removing the scumbags from society, and he always claimed that he never hurt an innocent civilian, only going after drug dealers, gang members and pimps who made a living off poisoning the streets. In 1975, Read was charged and convicted with 2 counts of armed robbery, the first of many convictions that would see Chopper locked up behind bars for most of his 20s and 30s. It was during this stint that Read's infamous Overcoat Gang was born. The gang wore long coats so that they could easily conceal weapons. In January 1978, Mark was arrested and convicted again, this time for entering a county court's courtroom and threatening a judge with a sawn-off shotgun. This was done in an attempt to hold the judge hostage until an inmate, Jimmy Longnan, was released. It was during this stint at Pentridge Prison's H Division where the now famous ear cutting took place. Mark Read asked another fellow inmate to cut off both his ears. The reasons for this have changed over time, and in different interviews, Read would often give different answers. The most agreed upon and widely accepted one being that the ear chopping was done so that Read could be removed from H Division and transferred to a mental health wing. Contrary to popular belief, this isn't how Mark Read was dubbed with the nickname Chopper. The nickname actually came from a cartoon bulldog in the show Yaki Doodle. A year later, Chopper was stabbed by members of his own gang in a sneak attack when they felt that his plan to cripple every other inmate in the entire division and win a gang war was going too far. Another theory is that he had a contract put on his head by the infamous Painters and Dockers Union. Read lost several feet of intestines in this attack. Later on, during the mid-80s, there would develop a feud between Mark and the Painters and Dockers Union, who were closely associated to the infamous Carlton crew, who was led by Alphonse Gangitano. In one instance, Chopper claimed that there had been a disagreement with Gangitano. After the disagreement, Gangitano burst open a toilet cubicle door with a number of associates and began a serious assault on Read, who made his escape, but not before smearing his feces into Gangitano's face. In 1987, Chopper became a police informant for Victoria Police, who gave him a bulletproof vest because they believed rival criminals had put a hit out on him. Later that year, abusing his new form of protection, he shot Sammy the Turk Ozakam dead outside Bojangles nightclub in St Kilda. In December 1989, Read was jailed yet again for at least 2 years for causing serious harm, arson, and reckless conduct. In November 1991, Chopper was released from what would have been his home for the last 16 years, Pentridge Prison, in Victoria, Australia. He moved to Tasmania and vowed to leave the life of violence and crime behind. Prior to his release, he was penning his own biography titled Chopper From the Inside. The book was released in December 1991 to critical and commercial success, making Chopper a quasi-celebrity and household name with many media outlets vying to get exclusive interviews. His success and freedom were, however, short-lived. While living in Tasmania, Chopper was convicted of shooting a member of a local motorcycle gang, Sydney Michael Collins. The incident took place in Reed's car. A bullet was recovered from the back seat of the car that matched a gun found at Reed's house, and Collins named Chopper as the shooter. Reed had profusely denied the allegation and pleaded not guilty in court, believing he had been framed in a conspiracy laid out by the Carlton crew and Alphonse Gangitano. Reed was, however, found guilty of committing an unlawful act intended to cause bodily harm. He was sentenced as a dangerous criminal to an indefinite time determinate of the governor, legal speak for throw away the key. 2 appeals were made against the conviction in the mid-90s. These were, however, rejected. In 1995, Chopper Reed married Mary Ann Hodge, a tax department employee. The ceremony took place behind bars at Risdon Prison. The two later had a son together, Charlie. In 1998, Reed's lawyers were finally successful in getting the dangerous criminal declaration overturned, and Chopper was granted parole. During his incarceration, Mark Reed had become somewhat of a bona fide author and released another 5 books detailing his life. These books became bestsellers and even gained attention from the Australian film industry, who wanted to make a movie based on one of his best-selling books. Rumour has it that originally Russell Crowe was in producers' minds for the titular role, but Mark Reed had other ideas for the part. The movie was filmed in 1999, directed by Andrew Dominic, and starred a relatively unknown comedic actor at the time, Eric Bana, portraying Chopper Reed. The film, titled simply Chopper, was released in 2000 and gained relative success in Australia and international critical acclaim, often cited as the role that put Eric Bana on the map. 2 years later, Chopper appeared in the Australian film Trojan Warrior. During all this success, it was, however, taking a toll on his personal life. In 2001, Chopper Reed and wife Mary Ann Hodge divorced. Over the next decade, Mark Reed released several more books, wrote poems, held art exhibitions of his own paintings, appeared in a few movies, toured Australia as a stand-up comic, and even released a hip-hop album. He became so widely known in Australia that he was even being parodied by comedians like Heath Franklin on comedic skits television show The Ronnie Johns Half Hour. In 2003, Chopper Reed remarried his lifelong friend Margaret Cesar. The couple had a son, Roy. Continuing with his author roots, he released a children's book titled Hooky the Cripple. The book garnered controversy as it was deemed too violent for young children. After enjoying over a decade of freedom and the limelight, Mark Reed was diagnosed with terminal liver cancer in April 2012, announcing to the public that he was not going to be accepting liver transplants that could save his life, stating that it wouldn't be fair to take some kiddie's liver to save a crook. In his last broadcast interview with 60 Minutes Australia, Reed confessed to 4 murders, something that he had previously not been charged with. The murders included the 1971 shooting of union boss Desmond Costello, 1987 shooting of Sammy the Turk, and the murder of Sydney Collins, who had been on the Australian missing persons list since 2002. Overall, Reed variously claimed to have been involved in the killing of 19 people and the attempted murder of 11 others. However, in his own style, he contradicted himself in a New York Times interview, stating that he had only killed about 7 people, depending on how you look at it. In his last interview, he showed no remorse or regret for his violent past. When asked, he said that the only people he stood over, tortured, or murdered were scumbags, drug dealers, pimps, or murderers. He never hurt an innocent civilian. Mark Chopper Reed passed away from his illness on October 2013. He was 58. What do you think of this criminal celebrity? Is it deserved? Was he the moral street cleaner of society that he claimed to be? Or was he just another violent crim with an ill-adjusted ego and some tall tales? Let us know in the comments below. This has been another episode of Melbourne's Criminal Underworld here on Shadow Matter. Stay tuned to see more videos on the saga coming soon. If you would like to see more content like this, then please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell to see more. And together, we can explore the strange, the terrifying, the unknown, the shadow matter.